would like to announce our next panel. The panel will be performed by 4 exceptional women. We call the panel the Women on the Silk Road of Impact. The moderator will be our friend Douja Ben Mahmoud Gharbi. Douja is the president of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Sustainable Development in Tunisia and also the High Commissioner of WBAF for Tunisia. Then next to her is Dr. Shehla Javed Akram. Shehla is the president of the Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Pakistan and also the WBAF Commissioner for Pakistan. Then there is Ms. Sabah Al-Moyed here, the managing partner, intellectual resources management from Bahrain. She's running a great accelerator in Bahrain. And Maria Hala, experienced angel investor from Greece. But I'm sure Douja will give enough time to the ladies that they present what they are doing. Now you're the privileged group because we have full 45 minutes for this panel. And for the audience, we will continue then with the last panel on the impact and health for another 45 minutes. So Douja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Renata, for this to organize this panel. I say hello to our nice speakers. I would like to start with Dr. Shehla. Dr. Shehla Javed, I see in your bio that you are a pioneer in healthcare in Pakistan. You are also you launched Pakistan's first hospital for acute medical care. And you are, and something very interesting, you established after 7 years of fighting and struggling, the Women's Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Pakistan. It's first time for me to hear about Women Chamber of Commerce. Yes. So can you tell us more about that and how you see impact investment in your country, and how you can you talk about your experience, because you are impacting certainly the economic and the ecosystem of women entrepreneurs in Pakistan. So can you tell us about that?
Thank you so much, Douja. I'm really honored that I've been invited here to represent my country as a High Commissioner. As you know, that this topic of impact investment and angel investment is still new in Pakistan, and we are still, getting policies made to make it more successful and make it more understandable for both the parties, the lenders and the lendee. As far as, but whatever we do. We don't talk about CSR, we don't talk about philanthropies, but even in our setting up a women's chamber, we had to convince the government by showing them the impact of the women's chamber. So that also included a lot of, that had a lot of investment, and 6 years we struggled for it, and 6 years running an office. It needs a lot of investment. So all the women, the founder, I'm the founder president, but the founder group was of 9 members. So we were constantly working on it, and the impact that we convinced the government finally was that we conducted a survey on 300 women, working women, versus equal number of non-working women. And the questionnaire was very interesting. The questionnaire, because that time we needed an impact to convince the government and to convince the families. Mm-hmm. Because they would also, traditional families, they would also not, accept a woman coming forward as and sitting in a chamber, because they thought it's a male-dominant area, the chambers. Usually they are male-dominant. So the study had impact was that the dropout rate of the children, the health, they had 2 health indices. the hemoglobin and the height and weight chart of the child, and the health index of the working women also, the women also. So whether her hemoglobin and her bone density was up to the standard or not. So what we found was a very amazing result, that the dropout rate of the children of the working women was amazingly low, though they were not at home like the housewives. I mean, whatever they gave the quality time to the families. Mm-hmm. And when they have power to spend, they will take a positive pathway to the development. And whatever, even if they spend on their children or their health, it adds to finally the society. So this, and the dropout rate of the children was very high in the non-working women, and the health index of the working women was at a borderline, and the non-working women enjoyed a good health. So these were the impact. We convinced the government that if you make us have a separate platform, these women will have a platform where they will not be inhibited to join, because it is mainly the inhibition which keeps them away from obtaining the facilities of their forum, because usually the families don't allow them to go to those places.
But even they will do commerce with men also. So.
They do, but the inhibition to come to a forum and talk about their problems is not a very common practice among the women I know. That's what I've seen. They would not come. So finally, after 6 years, we got this permission, and then it went to the National Assembly for the approval, and we got this thing approved. Because it is a government licensed. The government backs it. Government backs all the chambers. So this is also one of them. But since then, the representation of women has tremendously increased in Pakistan. When I was in the standard chambers, when I was elected as the executive member, I won by election, and there was no seat for the women. Now we have 80 seats for women all over Pakistan, mm-hmm. and plus we have a representation in the federation, so it's a huge representation that has come over. So this way, I mean, this impact is not that sort of an impact that we are talking now, that we understand now, but this is like talking years back in 2002 when we started this movement. Mm-hmm. Now the things have changed, and now these investments and this access to finance has become much better, and the women are now getting more comfortable and more confident. I can't boast that it is the chamber which has given them the confidence. It can be the years also, years of a presence, years of being as a forum. But anyway, we see a lot of change in the women as it is, and they have become now more documented, mm-hmm. and they're more confident, and I have less inhibition now to access the finance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sabah. Well, just one question I have in mind. So, are you doing some advocacy to enhance the business environment, to let the business environment more friendly for women in Pakistan?
Yes, advocacy is the main memorandum of our chamber. It's the main objective.
Okay.
Advocacy is the main what we do.
You have something
we
concrete.
We advocate both the parties, the women and the government.
Okay.
And the traders. I mean, we are the whole time we are into this advocacy, trying to get the networking done, and trying to break the barriers, and making the women come forward.
Okay, let us go to Bahrain with Mrs. Sabah Al-Muayyid. She's a veteran banker, had numerous senior executive positions, and she was general manager of the housing bank and held numerous board positions in banks, vocational training, university and schools. You are currently the owner of a consultancy firm specialized in investment in joint ventures which promote entrepreneurial and impact investments. I would like to ask you, what is your experience in the impact investment again, and how can impact women in the Silk Road?
Okay. Thank you, Douja, and I would like to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to share our experience. And basically, just to start the issue or talking about the impact investment, it's important really to also address what's happening in the Gulf countries as a whole. I think all Gulf countries have really placed an emphasis on promoting potential growth in the economy through investment in SMEs and investment in the infrastructure required for innovation. So the involvement of government to have such a vision have always been very important in order to promote also the private sector to start stepping in and taking also additional steps, whether at the angel investors, basically from the angel investor side or a VC side, or even as entrepreneurs. Talking about my own experience, maybe I can divide it into three basically phases. The first phase is that when I started my banking career. At that stage, we didn't have the definition of impact investment. What we had is the definition of socially responsible lending, And socially responsible lending, to a certain extent, it means you really provide funding for the right purpose, and at the same time try to ensure that it generates a positive impact, whether it's at mega projects or individual projects. And I do believe even, commercial banks, although maybe have not directly kind of like publicized the impact investment, but reality they had a lot of positive contribution in a sense that a lot of people started having access to funding that we didn't have access, like the consumer banking, people have built houses, etc. There are many examples. The second phase is that when I moved from the private sector to the public sector, and I was appointed as the general manager of the housing bank, which is the largest public sector mortgage bank. And there, the socially responsible approach was translated when we really managed to raise funding of almost more than $350 million to $400 million just to go and address new mortgages to clear the waiting list. And that was established by partnering with the private sector. It was really a public sector institution bringing a private sector to come in for two major objectives. One relates to mortgages, which are very important. You give people accommodation, you give them shelter, you make them feel comfortable. And the focus was on the what you call lower income group, and which we call social housing, social mortgages. So normally they are at a very soft terms, and at the same time, the government really play an important role in subsidizing and offsetting any losses in the case of bankruptcy, because nobody is thrown out of his or her home. And at the same time, we delivered more than 1,000 housing units for the social income group. And that, in a sense, is part of the impact investment. I mean, you don't see it. The angel investors were in a different form. They were like the bankers, and at the same time, the investors who came and joined in projects which were not giving the highest return. The return were in the range of 6 to 7%, but they believe that was part of their responsibility. In the same years that I was running the bank, we established with my chairman and with the support of UNIDO, we established the first microfinance bank in Bahrain. And that microfinance bank, the objective really was to reach the lower income group, the one who are, we call them the unprivileged, the one who would not have access to financing in the same way that the others would have to commercial banks. Then after that, when I decided to step down and become more like an angel investor, I started thinking really how to basically play a role in bringing up and enhancing leadership, especially among women, and bringing up more entrepreneurs who are involved on the innovation side. And it's very important really to differentiate between just general SMEs and innovators, you know. The innovators have to, at the end, they are entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneur, if they bring in successful businesses and if they are able to scale them up. So looking for almost a year, trying to find out what was the best formula, then I realized really, you know, for the innovation, you have an infrastructure. You want to have angel investors, but you have to create them first for the angel investors to thrive, and at the same time for the VC culture to thrive within your own economy. And it's happening now in Bahrain and also within all the GCC states, as well as I think a number of the Arab countries. So I decided to partner with a regional accelerator, and it took us almost 1.5 years, you know, although we got the sign-off in end of early 2016 for the general accelerator. It took time with the processes, and finally we managed to get the final sign-off, and we are launching now in March. Now, how would we link this to the Silk Road?
You leave the bank and you are a funder of an accelerator in Bahrain.
Yes, and we got the largest funding also from the Labor Fund, which is a government-owned institution. It's called Tamkeen, and they are funding us for the next 3 years on the basis that we would raise a VC and angel investors to support the startup exiting from the accelerator. So it's a continuous challenges, which is very interesting. Now, how can we link it to the Silk Road? You know, the Silk Road is basically, this is what the initiative that has been floated, which basically covers 65 countries, continent and maritime. And basically it looks at the old traditional trade and investment road that was in the past where for years, you know, we know that whether it was on the continent or through the seaside, where there would be significant effort to start promoting trade and investment. We, as well as in coordination with the UNIDO, where they are housing UNIDO in Bahrain, they are housing a Silk Road kind of secretarial support. We would try to work closely with them, and they have signed with us as an accelerator so that we can promote women getting the right infrastructural access in terms of accelerators, access to financing, training, and network to be able to participate in the enhancement of the trade and investment flow within the Silk Road. And we do hope, you know, that it has to start. We do hope that it would become successful.
It will be a question of connectivity. You have to connect people over the Silk Road. Means it's interesting to say that today the countries. I like one of the remarks in the opening, no borders. We need to see
Absolutely.
Let's say the private sector and with women, of course, have to work together and forget about borders. So it's a question of open countries and to work to help people work together, especially women working together.
Can I add something in it?
Yes, but I will ask. Go.
Talking of Silk Road, you know, Pakistan is like the first country to come across the Silk Road. So CPEC, as in a corridor of economic corridor, this is the name given for Pakistan, and it took us quite a while to make our women understand what it holds for women. It was a difficult thing to understand ourselves and then to transfer it to the women. So we arranged quite a few meetings and seminars with the Chinese, with the Pakistanis, with the government to make them understand. But till now, the framework of what a woman actually can benefit out of CPEC is still a question mark. Because that's not very clear. I mean, it's like 2 years now we're working on it.
Yes.
Except that they can have warehouses and they can have vocational training centers or, you know, these sorts of things. But as such, they can't be like, it's very, I mean, I don't have women in Pakistan who are going to make motorways.
Yeah.
So these areas were the only 2 areas which were highlighted finally of the warehouse, storages, and these vocational training centers. But, I mean, on the face of it, it looks very attractive. But if you go into depth of it and pinpoint to the women, because they need hand-holding at every stage.
Yes.
So if you pinpoint, then it was like a difficult task.
Yeah, exactly. I will ask Maria, who is working a lot with entrepreneurs in early stage. Maria Shehla from Greece is an investment and angel investor. She has been concentrated on the extension of the Greek entrepreneurial ecosystem, something I share a lot with her, and the establishment of local angel investment community. She provides coaching, mentoring on ventures and seed and startup stage, helping them finding sources of financing. And you know that this is, let's say, the difficult part when we come to entrepreneurship. So, Maria, how could we attract and include more women in impact investing? And when we attract them, what will be the opportunities and benefits?
In order to attract female investors in impact investment, actually this is the more challenging and most important part of the whole process, and it has to be based in the completely different process that female investors engage to their male peers. And actually this process and this differentiation has to do with the social and personal values of female investors. There are three very simple and basic steps that you can adapt in order to attract female investors, and these are the inspiration of female investors, engaging them in this whole process, and at the end of the day, commit them. How can we inspire female investors? We can inspire by simply focus on what is really important for female investors, which is female investors at the end of the day are not only concentrated in the returns they can have through their investments. What they really care about is the achievement they can actually get through their investments. And this is a process that we have to follow and concentrate in order to make them feel comfortable with this whole idea. We can use very simple measures like, let's say, statistics or successful case studies of female impact entrepreneurs and provide them as a way to mimic and to follow through their future investments. At the end of the day, we can also advise and educate female investors in order to provide them the opportunities and the threats of impact investment, which return they can actually expect at the end of the day, and which are the actual sectors of impact investment they can focus in. Far from inspiring women investors, we can also engage them. And how can we engage them? We can urge them to become part of female angel groups, impact female angel groups, also impact female angel networks, and by following and adapting very simple managerial skills, we can use workshops, we can use educated courses, or even conferences in order to make them feel more part of it, more engaged on it. Actually, World Business Angel Forum 2018 is an excellent opportunity for us and for female investors that we do participate in this conference to take part of this community, to feel part of this community, meet a couple of leaders in impact, in female impact investment sector, and use them as an example for us in order to attract even more female investors in the sector. Last but not least, we can commit female investors in impact investment by urging them to incorporate more impact startups in their investment portfolio, or also becoming members as board of the directors of CEDE and startup impact ventures. As far as your second question is concerned, regarding which are the opportunities and actual benefits that we actually get from attracting more female investors in impact investments, women per se are the dynamic force in impact investment. Women consider by roughly more than 90% that social responsibility is something that they want to achieve through their investment. Also by more than 95% consider as contributing and helping others one major staff in their investments. Also we, ladies, are the probably the biggest global consumer in terms of size as a market. We're more than 20 trillion globally and expected to grow to 30 million because, and you understand about the figure, how this figure come out, because we make decisions in our life due to our multitasking role, yes, from being females and having to decide for ourselves, exactly, for having to decide for our families, for our children, their studies, whether they're going to school or not, exactly, about our housing and everything. So we're a big, big market. Last but not least, as probably since we're all here, we care about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is the leading part for our growth of our economies globally and a way to fight unemployment. So can you combine, if we combine for one side entrepreneurship and female investors who actually, it has been found out that the number of female entrepreneurs grows much faster than the respective number of male entrepreneurs. Can you imagine what the benefits would come out if we combine entrepreneurship and female impact investors? The results could be enormous and even quite drastic for our society.
Okay, and may I ask you, as business angel, yeah, what's the difference between women business angel or male business angel?
I could say it's
because I see that, yeah, many programs try to have more women business angel, yes, that they are actually so.
The major difference between the two groups, you could say, is that although male angel investors and male investors in general are very risk takers, more inclined to risk takers. On the other side, women investors are risk averse. On the other hand, when it comes to innovation, because it has behind it the idea of offering to our society, women angel investors are more inclined to take part in innovative companies and more ready to take part in innovation, even at the very, very early stages. I mean, and through what comes out from the research that I proceeded through my postgraduate degree, it has been found out that women angel investors are ready to invest in seed companies in much early stage than male angel investors. Okay. And probably this has to do with the idea of offering and supporting, and we have women having in the back of our minds how to support in our society, in our entrepreneurs, and the next generations.
Thank you, ladies. Fine. Just a last point, yeah.
Yes, I would like to add, I think if you look at, like we look at the statistics back home, the SMEs constitute almost more than 85% of the number of businesses in terms of a CR.
Everywhere, yes.
However, and out of that 85%, majority are women, because you take the microfinance, you take the smaller businesses, and a lot of men maybe, for certain reason, they would have also the CRs in their wives' names, So there is a presence, and we know also that the high net worth individuals, woman, is expanding, whether it's through inheritance or through by being part of business conglomerate. I think it's really forums like this that can help to promote and get women to become more aware of what are there on the other hand,
Yeah.
Is it the return? And as you rightly said, in terms of impact investment, I think they would buy into it, because yes. whatever they would look at, they would always look at the social aspects to it. It's really, and this is where I think countries and policymakers have to create that kind of infrastructure to promote the awareness of innovation, to start getting startups, more startups. As you get more startups, you'll get women as part of those startups, and then those women, and you get women, you invite women, the traditional investors, you get them to start thinking at those startups, and there is, it's a process, but that process has to start, because it didn't happen. If you look also at the female angel investors, even in the US, who's much, the process started much earlier, it's no more than 15%. So I think it's just really creating that kind of networking, communicating, and at the same time try to, as you rightly said, get women to show. Yeah. Show them in every occasion that you can, in order to get them to start feeling the confidence of themselves, and they can make the right presentation, and they can operate very well within teams, and they can make their businesses successful.
Okay, if I can ask you, what will be your takeaway recommendation to close the panel and perhaps get one or two questions?
Shall
Maria?
I start? Okay.
Yes.
I believe, and it has been found out through statistics, that women influence, decide, participate in a global market of more than $20 trillion, which is expected actually to reach as much as $30 trillion by year 2030. On the other hand, impact investment is a huge market. It has been mentioned in the beginning of our session early in the morning that it may reach up to 400 billion in year 2030. And actually it's a very dynamic sector in our societies and in our economies. Can we imagine the benefits that could come out if we combine the 20 trillion female investment community, which, by the way, believe by more than 33% that social responsibility is what they need to see in their investments, with a dynamic sector of impact investment? The results will be enormous for our society, for our world, for us per se, and of course for our next generation. And this is what I would like for our audience to take back home as a main idea.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay.
Sabah?
Maybe what I would like to have as a take out of this forum is really to focus on bridging the gap. You have investors, multinational institutions, pension funds, big companies who are flooded with liquidities and who adopts diversification, who maybe have been shying away from getting into the entrepreneurship, seed funding, follow-on investment as a result of lack of understanding. Now, more of them are really seeing the value of basically bringing in their liquidity to be invested on the innovation side. And if we really, to us, the innovation and entrepreneurship are another financial instruments. Make it, package it as a financial instrument. We see today the games in the bitcoins and digital currencies, which they tell you there is a stored value. Where is the stored value? It beats all the fundamentals that we have learned at schools and in colleges. And even in our banking career. So if we can make this as like financial instruments, there are many aspects related to the basically entrepreneurs and startup, management, business case, etc. But if we can make this, and it's the same, when you go into hedge funding, it's all mathematically driven, computer generated output that people invest in millions in. So I think my takeout, what I would like to pass is that how we can bridge that gap between the one who need that kind of funding and the one who have the ability to have the funding, whether it's a private sector or a public sector institution.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabah. Dr. Shehla?
As I said, that Pakistan is pretty new in this angel funding. Till now, the World Bank report in our country is that the investment was for 23 million with 74 transactions into 20 angel investments. But none of them did very well, except two. And out of them, there were two ladies only who are angel investors. One is Aisha Khan and one is Aisha Douja. So, this sort of scarce figures. But what I was thinking that all these years after the formation of the chamber, we had worked pretty hard with State Bank to make policies conducive for women, that they can have access to finance. So we got approved a collateral-free lending from the banks for the WSMEs. Then we also raised the amounts of microfinance for the marginalized women. Then also the Prime Minister announced the youth loan scheme up to the level of 3 million rupees. But you know, nothing actually broke the barrier. Still, the women who were beneficiaries were still in 2 digits or 1 digit. I mean, it was not much. But coming here, I have actually learned a lot, and and then while I was preparing to learn about Pakistan, what is happening in angel investment, the main drawback in Pakistan is the legislation about angel investment. That has to be simplified and has to be cost effective. The cost of the documentation is very high. So that's very scary. I mean, that would just put off the women. So that is what my objective would be, to have a better legislation that we can have it because we have a voice, and then have it more simplified and less cost effective, and then to promote the women to join these events when the universities holds their annual angel investment events. Because all these universities are now being funded by the government, Higher Education Commission, and they all have incubators. So they all invite these business communities to join them when they're presenting their businesses. So that would be like networking directly, one-to-one, along with facilitation and awareness on angel investment. And hopefully next year when we get together again, I have better figures to share.
Okay, but you know, sometimes without regulation, it's better than having a regulation. So.
Because they make it more.
No, but
Right.
At this time present, the regulations are very strict.
Okay.
It's the other way around. If there were no regulations, it was good.
Okay.
But the regulations that I've been told, they're pretty harsh and pretty strict on angel investments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we have room for 1 or 2 questions. We have enough time. If someone have a question to the ladies. No questions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you very much.
And thank you,
And,
Douja.
thank you, Renata. Thank you.
Thank you.